Good evening, all. We, the Department of Family Medicine, Government Medical College, Kozhikode, is very happy to be back with our webinar series. And this is our seventh webinar. And I'm sure that you don't need an introduction of our speaker. Our speaker is Dr. P.K. Shashidharan, sir. He was a former HOD, Internal Medicine, Government Medical College, Kozhikode, and now he is working as a senior consultant in PVS Hospital and Aster Means, Kozhikode. And we all know he's a great clinician and academician with immense clinical and teaching experience. And the topic for today is one of the most relevant topic in the present scenario. That is how to live along with the COVID, Zika, dengue, lepto, and many more. I know that you are eagerly waiting for the session, and I welcome our speaker, Dr. B.K. Shashidharan sir, and all the delegates for this session. And I want to tell you that we are uploading all the videos of the webinar so far conducted in our YouTube channel. And the name of the YouTube channel is Department of Family Medicine, GMC, Kozhikode. And you can, if you missed any of the webinars, you can watch the videos and please share among the doctor groups. And if you have any queries, you can ask directly at the end of the session, or you can put it in the chat box. Thank you. Over to you.
Good evening to all. My respects to all those who have joined the class this week. We know that we are now in the middle of or just entered the second wave of COVID-19, and we are expecting the third wave. At that time, Zika also has made its presence in Kerala. And we already have been having several more serious diseases like dengue, leptospirosis, malaria, typhoid, scab typhus, cholera, dysentery, TB, and HIV, and whatnot, along with the non-communicable diseases. So we should know how to live along with all these and how to prioritize our approach, how to plan things to deal with all these, rather than focusing only on COVID-19. So I thought I'll share with you this week on my thoughts on how to go about doing things in this scenario. I'll share the screen now. Hello.
Hello, sir.
Can you see it?
Yes, sir.
This is the title of the talk, How to Live Along with COVID-19, Dengue, Zika, Lepto, Malaria, and Prevent People Ending Up in ICUs and Ventilators. Why are we waiting to reach them to the ICUs and ventilators? Can we prevent them reaching there? That's a thought we need to give in this scenario. My talk is divided under these headings. COVID-19 as a health problem and how it became a dreaded disease. Facts and the reality checks needed in infections, how to manage COVID-19 during this community spread, the need to nurture clinical skill, common sense, and social sense, how to tackle all infections, and how to move forward. How COVID-19 became a dreaded disease. Let us see how it has happened. You know that it all started with the Wuhan epidemic in China in December 2019. When 3 patients with fever, cough, and chest discomfort got admitted there, the chest X-ray showed some abnormality. There was no diagnosis. And then they sent the respiratory secretions for evaluation. And a new coronavirus was discovered in the samples. But CT scan suggested pneumonia. But we should know one thing at this stage, that CT or laboratory diagnosis is most often not the actual diagnosis. It can indicate only something. Even if there is pneumonia, virus need not be the cause for it. This is something which we should always know. Pulmonary thromboembolism is often mistaken as pneumonia in CT. This is a very important observation. Virus or bacteria may be incidentally detected. And then what happened to us, news of the new virus was flashed all over the world. Then this report came in New England Journal of Medicine from Wuhan in January 2020, and followed by that another report, and clinical characteristics came. And this is what, based on these three reports, the first publication had 429 patients, 2% was the mortality. Second articles with 1,100 patients, 1.4% was the mortality. But both these studies were based on confirmed cases using RT-PCR. They did not include, or they did not even test asymptomatic people or minimally symptomatic people. They were all excluded. They were not even, some people who did not test also, in spite of having mild symptoms. So finally, they have concluded that the fatality rate must be less than 1%. They said even it could be less than 0.1%. That was their comment in that first study. And they finally made a comment that overall outcome is similar to a severe influenza. This was the conclusion from the study from China. And the higher mortality was only among elderly with coexisting conditions. There were no cases in children younger than 15 years. Then they made a comment that children had mild symptoms and or had no symptoms. And these reports were enough for clinicians like us to predict what we need to do. And then based on these and based on our clinical experience of dealing with infections, I started educating people to avoid the scare and how to face it bravely without any fear. But I had some problems. And I have the follow-up of my patients with COVID-19 for the last 15 months. Again, I am reiterating the same thing which I had told 15 months back. What was unnatural was, being a new virus, it infected several people simultaneously. That was the only unnatural thing happened. And it exposed all those who are waiting to develop some problems. It exposed all those with vulnerabilities. And they were all brought together to the hospital. That was the only unnatural event. And that led to overwhelming the hospital facilities in some places. And that was a reason for the initial lockdowns. That had a reason, only to flatten the curve. Why continue the lockdown even now? That is a question. And why did the fear psychosis come? Deaths were reported meticulously with a daily score, like a football play or badminton score from all over the world. And there was a fear of happy hypoxia, and people got the impression that they all need ventilators. That became a news. Everyone forgot the majority, that 99% who survived, or they were the asymptomatic group. We went after the death score and the projected cause of death. That's what created all the issues. And then we started preparing only for the very sick. I still have not come across, I'm confidently saying this because I still have not come across anyone who died purely due to COVID-19. There may be some patients whom you may say that he didn't have anything, he died. But we do not know what they were having and they were waiting to develop. If you explore their diet and lifestyle and their other parameters, I have several such patients' history with me. I was convinced that they all had some problem or other. And then there was a plethora of confusing messages in social media. They made an upper hand over scientific thinking among us. And these confusing messages all began with our Bill Gates. He wrote a perspective in New England Journal of Medicine in March 2020, 5th March 2020. He recommended vaccine as the only solution. I was doubting what enabled Mr. Bill Gates or what made him eligible to write a perspective in a medical journal like a New England Journal of Medicine. I could not figure out a reason other than commercial interest of the journal or of the author. This is how things all started. Then came the first report from the USA, where they also used CT scans to diagnose COVID pneumonia. So this is another disaster. Once something happens in the USA, that becomes a standard of practice. Then after that, CT became the most important investigation to diagnose COVID pneumonia. Why no infection in India? That was another speculation. People started speculating and making wild guesses and guidelines using their official status, including These are some of the opinion given during that time when there was a delay in coming of the infection to India. The Indian gene is COVID-19 resistant. The low level of hygiene has made Indians immune to this. The Indian curry might have indigenous ingredients that are antiviral. The Indian habit of eating and washing their hands may play a role. The Namaste helped. India has warmer climate. These kind of wild guesses alone were going around everywhere. Even now it is continuing. So the problems that we face with COVID is it is a genuine threat to the global health but it is not primarily due to the virus. The issues behind the disease and the scare that was generated and the focus getting diverted only to the virus is a real issue. Now, what are the facts and reality checks needed in infections in general? We discussed last time that all the short fevers or the common colds, including influenza, known as flu, there are some 200 viruses implicated for these, which includes coronaviruses also. It's not a new discovery. COVID-19 is just one of them, as evidenced by its behavior till now. And they usually recover very fast, and those with other health problems only may develop pneumonia. That's the point which we fail to identify. If you look at any infection, it is always an interaction between agent, host, and environment. The environment may be congenial because of poor waste management, sanitation facility, poor sanitation, contamination of food and water, and the agent gets an opportunity to enter the host. If by chance the dose and virulence is too heavy, the host cannot resist the infection. This happens extremely rarely. Massive doses of the agent entering the host. It's like a tsunami happening. It does not happen. Usually, the agent enters in smaller doses. Then the fate of the agent in the host is decided by the host immune mechanisms. That is basically diet and lifestyle. It's a lack of respiratory hygiene and lack of personal hygiene that allows the agent to enter the body. This is where we can act. Then after that, we need to act on modifying the host immune mechanisms by modifying diet and lifestyle. It's not an activity of the indigenous people. Modern medicine doctors have to take it up. Why any infection? Poor sanitation, poor environmental hygiene, unsafe drinking water, contamination of food and water, poor personal hygiene, poor respiratory hygiene. This is what is happening in COVID. And then poor immunity of the subjects, basically decided by malnutrition and poor lifestyle. Remember that COVID-19 is only a once in a lifetime experience. We cannot copy from anywhere. We have to use wisdom, common sense, logic, and logistics. We might have been witnessing people changing the guidelines every now and then. This is because nobody has a complete experience of what to do. All viral infections have some common behaviors. We need to be familiar with that. And the knowledge about the virus alone is not enough in planning. That's what happens when virologists give the plan for managing it. We need familiarity with the human behaviors and familiarity with the infections, including all kinds of infections. These two are essential in making planning of on containing the disease. And mentioning something about my own encounter with the COVID-19, I now stopped seeing patients due to fear. Only patient who died under my care reported as COVID that was not COVID. Because that patient had a very serious autoimmune disorder. Patient had a bilateral lung infiltrates declared as COVID pneumonia, but I was sure it was really not. Similar story I got from all over the world, from all my students and clinical colleagues. And several patients were managed at home. I did not even ask them to go and test even. I avoided hospitalization and even avoided testing in many of them. I have been guiding several of my doctor colleagues and students in planning management, and I have been collecting feedback from all over the state and outside. And my observation based on all disease, it's not a dangerous disease. It's just another common viral infection. What is unnatural is it is new to us. Probably we are responsible for introducing it. And many people may get infected simultaneously. That was the only unnatural thing that has happened. And the only viable solution now is, especially during the community spread, Learn to live with it rather than running away from it or shutting down everything. Genuine mortality is very low, and mortality happens only in those with vulnerabilities. This is a point we need to keep in mind. So let us see who all are vulnerable to disease. It's okay to presume that everyone could be having the virus, but take universal precautions to prevent the entry of the virus into us till herd immunity is established. That's the only thing we need to do. People who develop serious symptoms are different. Even they were apparently normal till they develop the disease. They have diagnosed or undiagnosed health problems. Most of them, I have been exploring all those patients who came with symptomatic COVID or post-COVID syndrome, and I was convinced that they do not take a balanced diet. They all of them had one or more or several vitamin deficiencies: vitamin D, folic acid, B12, B6, vitamin C, everything. Some of them even did not take enough water when they developed the problems. Many of them were overweight or obese. In fact, the lockdown had helped only to increase their number. I had seen patients gaining weight from 2 kilograms to 22 kilograms. Rarely only I found out some patients who did not put on weight. And those who do not do any exercise, that too only increased during lockdowns. People are afraid to go out. Those who consume fast food, junk foods, and eating for entertainment, that also increased among the rich. But the poor were spending time without anything to eat. Those who are stressed and are unable to manage it, actually, we were adding oil to fire, increasing the stress. We were only advising about increasing their fear psychosis. And those who took to alcohol and smoking. And those who were exposed to all these for several months and years and were already having disease like COPD, NASH, liver disease, or heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, kidney disease, they were vulnerable. So these are the people who are vulnerable to the disease. And how do we predict vulnerability in those who are apparently normal? If you can just interact with them, it is easy to find out. Study their dietary habits, lifestyle habits, and symptoms if they have any, and a detailed physical examination for height, weight, and BMI, and signs of deficiency diseases. You can look for signs of iron deficiency, B12 deficiency, vitamin D deficiency, and combined with some easily available laboratory tests, which includes a complete hemogram, where we can get look at the MCV, RDW, ESR, SGPT, SGOT, and sugar and serum protein. These will tell what all vulnerabilities they have. With all these, we can pick up the vulnerable people and we can manage those vulnerabilities so that they do not end up in ICUs. And these people should be managed in the periphery by the family doctors, GPs, and internal medicine doctors. So remember that asymptomatic COVID positives are not patients at all. In fact, they are an asset to us. Their immune status is better. That's why they remain asymptomatic. Why do we see them as a threat to the society? We need to actually increase the number of such people to reduce the mortality. So what is needed is take universal precautions. That's all what we need to. But we are doing it. We are overdoing that on that. Nothing can stop the virus, no matter what we do. It's because it is highly contagious. Had we allowed all the healthy people to get exposed to a virus, by this time natural herd immunity would have developed. That's what has happened in Kerala. We could have even used vaccine only for the selected groups by now. This is what Sweden has done. But because of the fear psychosis, they are also planning to give vaccine to all. But at least they did not lock down anything. So the point I was trying to stress was that we need to focus on the host, not on the virus, in dealing with these infections. Let us prepare the host to fight the infection, not by locking down, but by equipping the human body to fight the infection. There is no point chasing the elusive virus. It is like chasing a wind. Allow the society to move on. We can even allow the healthy people to move around. And the post-COVID, long COVID, all are due to undiagnosed health problems in them. With this, I have several patients with me now. And such people only can effectively break the chain. People who got infected and developed antibodies. These are the people who can actually help us. So the focus should be on herd immunity. That is a key to stop any infection. And antibody mediated or B cell mediated herd immunity is only one of them. The most effective herd immunity is innate immunity. Innate immunity is decided by T cells, macrophages, neutrophils, and eosinophils. These are never even tested in the laboratory. There are no methods to test them. We go after only the B cell mediated immunity, that too vaccine mediated B cell mediated immunity. We forget about the natural infection mediated herd immunity. So in antibody mediated or B cell mediated herd immunity, we have two choices. One is by natural infection, other is by vaccination. The choice should be ours as well. Resorting to vaccination alone and locking down people is really unscientific. Manifestations of the disease are absent in mild or mild in 99%. Why do we lock down always? I still do not understand. I would recommend herd immunity by natural infection as an option to those who are willing and healthy otherwise. That immunity that you get by natural infection is more comprehensive and more lasting than vaccination. This I predicted long back. This is the point we need to know. If natural infection does not give protective antibodies, vaccination will not work. Vaccines often contain only one portion of the virus. It cannot develop neutralizing antibodies against all components of the virus. Infection or vaccine generates antibodies only in those with good innate immunity. That is another background issue. If you are already having good innate immunity, then only you can generate good antibody response, either to an infection or to a vaccination. Again, innate immunity is more important. If we can afford to face the infection naturally, why can't we go for it? Why not we work for herd immunity by natural infection as an additional option or even as a better option? This is a thought we should make at least now. Look at what the person who is advising our government to push vaccination as the only solution, justifying vaccination by using this comment. Natural infection induces both virus neutralizing antibody and T cell mediated immunity. Vaccine does not induce T cell mediated immunity, remember that. Natural infection is indeed protective in the vast majority. This is a justification for vaccination itself. Then we hold only on to vaccine and we forget about the opportunity to get natural infection and develop immunity. That's absurdity. We conveniently forgot innate immunity. It is also a herd immunity. Herd only refers to a group. Unfortunately, for our virologists, herd immunity
ഏതാണ് മാഡം ന്യൂറോബാഡ് അടിച്ചു
please mute, please. So we conveniently forget the herd immunity, innate herd immunity. Herd only refers to a group only. The society can have good innate immunity by spreading the practice of good diet and lifestyle among everyone. That is a basic need even for responding optimally to vaccine or natural infection. Because the antigen processing is done by the macrophages and the B cells are controlled by T cells. These all depend on diet and lifestyle, including vitamin D. It's the best example because vitamin D stimulates the macrophages and improves its antibody the ability to respond to infections. And that is the best herd immunity we can ever dream of. And that is essential for developing antibodies either to vaccine or to natural infection. But unfortunately, we focused only on the antibody-mediated herd immunity, that too by vaccination alone, not even by natural infection, spreading the message that it's a deadly disease, all will die, nothing had happened, and at least now we are convinced. Now the next question comes, is a vaccine or was it so urgent? At least now it is urgent. I can't say that it is not needed because the fear psychosis that we had generated is too much. So we need vaccine very badly. That is only because of that. But the reality was that we had more important things to do. We had we had neglected several other issues because 99% will recover spontaneously even if they are symptomatic. They will develop better antibody response, better than vaccination. Children and adults are already exposed. They already have antibodies. Somebody has reported from AMS that 70% of children already have antibodies. They did not have any symptoms even. This would have happened here also. Those who develop problems have diagnosed or undiagnosed health issues. We get only fragmented observations nowadays. Nobody gives a complete observation. We know that vaccination will give benefit. There are numerous studies on that, and we are madly after that. Natural infection gives benefit, but no one is ready to accept, thinking that the disease will kill us. Less incidence in those who do exercise, then why not we promote it? Why lockdown? Vitamin D deficiency and COVID-19 relation is observed because it was found that vitamin D deficiency can increase the risk of COVID pneumonia. But how do we get vitamin D? I had given a talk last time that it is only possible by a balanced diet. Let us provide that. Stress management helps, but how can we manage it in this scenario? We kept on generating more of it. That also helps, but we forgot that. B12 folic acid deficiency and NASH as an underlying problem is still not realized by anyone. This is a real threat which has been overlooked. You look at what happened in Gujarat, it is due to B12 folic acid deficiency and NASH. That is why the Gujarat had the problem in spite of being very obese. And wherever you have problems, you can find out such vulnerabilities. This is what happens nowadays. There are numerous guidelines, cures, remedies, and suggestions, but none of them see the real problem: malnutrition, poor lifestyle. Everyone looks through their own narrow vision and make their own comments and recommendations. Nobody has developed the 360-degree vision, at least on individual health. 360-degree vision on public health is also equally important. Unless somebody has 360-degree vision on individual health and 360-degree vision on public health, that person is not competent to advise the masses. It is possible only for the GPs and family doctors, which we do not have here. And that is why we are failing. In the name of science, we fail to see the macro issues and they're linked to microscopic issues like vitamin D deficiency, which I had already discussed that it is due to poor or intake of a balanced diet. Now coming to the real problem, how to manage COVID-19 now during the community spread. The golden rule that we need to follow is test only the symptomatic people. Testing the asymptomatic people is unscientific now during the community spread. Initially, there was a justification to stop the infection coming in, but now that time is gone. Why test the asymptomatic people? No laboratory test should be done without proper clinical judgment. It is a clinician who should decide, not the administration. If there are no symptoms and no abnormalities on clinical evaluation, there is no question of doing any laboratory test, except in rare settings, that too imposed by the guidelines. Only after careful history and physical examination we should do it. Only after deciding on the diagnostic possibilities we should ask for a test. Coming to category A patients having mild symptoms, the 90% belong to this. Prevent them from ending up having severe disease. Do not make them buy pulse oximeters. It's absurdity to ask them to buy pulse oximeter and look at it periodically. Instead, you can do so many other things. Tell them about how to eat a balanced diet. And for that, we need to remove marginalization in the society. That is another issue. It has to be started today. There is no question of starting tomorrow. Do not postpone it for tomorrow. It has to be started one day earlier. It is better. Lockdown will make them more marginalized. That's what has happened. Educate them to achieve weight loss if they are already overweight. At least prevent them becoming overweight or weight gaining. Give them on scientific methods of weight reduction, not by shortcuts like fasting, dieting, or the keto diet. Even the extremely vulnerable people would benefit by this plan. That was not done. The people discussed as if it is a long-term plan. Educate them about the need to restrict carbohydrates. That was not done. Instead, we provided enough carbohydrates and they did not eat any vegetables and fruits. Stress on the need to maintain good hydration and to prevent thrombosis. Educate them for good orodental hygiene to prevent aspiration pneumonia. We know that many of them develop pneumonia, but pneumonias occur by microaspiration or macroaspiration. Ensure adequate sleep and rest. Practical tips to manage their stress. Counseling is needed when they need it. but do not frighten them with the death score and the new variants. Now we are talking about Delta variant and other variants. We are not talking about what they should do. Prescribe multivitamin tablets. This is what doctors can do now to correct the existing deficiencies along with the other advices. Should not go for blood levels to diagnose nutritional deficiencies. Do not ask them to get vitamin D and butol levels. Just prescribe it in moderate doses, mild doses. And good dietary history and complete hemogram is enough to predict all the vulnerabilities. Vitamin D can be given 2000 units daily with the calcium supplements. Identify the strict vegetarians who do not take and those who do not take meat. All these people have vitamin B12 deficiency. Or if they have high MCV, definitely they have B12 folic acid deficiency. Give them vitamin B12. Injections can be given, but give only cyanocobalamin or hydroxycobalamin, not the methylcobalamin. It will not correct the B12 deficiency. Multivitamin tablets also can be added to that, which contains vitamin C and riboflavin. Give B12, beyond B12, B6 pyridoxine supplements to correct the hyperhomocysteine, which is important cause for thrombotic episode, which is universally present in those who develop thrombotic episodes. That is a basic cause for the COVID pneumonia. And avoid the use of NSAID at any cost in a febrile patient, because that can predispose to organ damage. Do not investigate or refer short fevers without alarm signals, which we discussed last time. If we do, it will only complicate the picture, end up in chaos. Why should we send patients who do not have symptoms to COVID care centers? Dengue and NS1, COVID-19 by RT-PCR, leptoserology are done injudiciously these days. As I mentioned before, asymptomatic COVID positive report is just like an incidentaloma detected on routine scanning where the patient does not have any symptoms. So let us identify those with NASH, NAFLD, and these are the people who will benefit from plasma therapy. It is not the convalescent plasma that helps these patients. The plasma actually provides the missing factors in these patients which predispose them to develop a thrombotic episode, that is protein C and S, even vitamins may be given. It is not the antibodies that helps them. So what do these alarm signals indicate, which we discussed last time? It could be another fever, or there are other underlying illnesses. It's not that virus has produced a serious disease. Please watch the video of the last class on fever clinical evaluation, where we discussed all these in detail. Coming to management of severe disease, they become severe because they had underlying problems, not because of the severity of the virus. Follow the measures that we discussed for minor illness. That has to be combined. Along with that, give them folic acid and injection B12. Give only cyanocobalamin or hydroxycobalamin, not methylcobalamin, since their deficiency is universal in those with symptoms. As I mentioned, hyperhomocysteine is the important cause for prothrombotic states. And give injection heparin, 2,500 to 5,000 units subcutaneous twice daily, because many of them have those with respiratory distress, many of them have thrombosis. And it can be increased to full dose if already they are in respiratory distress, but make sure there are no contraindications for use of heparin. When will you use hydroxychloroquine as steroid? Hydroxychloroquine 200 milligram BD is an immunomodulator. It has to be given to all those with the respiratory symptoms or all those with NASH, because they have a hyperinflammatory state. The immunomodulatory function would help them to prevent the cytokine storm. Or if they already have an underlying autoimmune disorder, that will definitely control the hyperinflammatory stage. And if they have respiratory distress, add dexamethasone 4 milligram 8 hourly. You don't have to go for the costly methylprednisolone. Make sure there are no contraindications and reassess the need for it every time you give the steroid. It's a double-edged weapon. Who will benefit from plasma therapy? Only those with NASH or underlying CLD, which you can pick up by SGPT elevation or evidence of chronic liver disease, either acute or chronic. Even if they have 2 kilogram weight gain from their previous weight, that can tilt the balance to the wrong side. And the plasma actually provides protein C and S. And their deficiency could lead to thrombosis. They are natural anticoagulants, which are deficient in patients with liver disease. Plasma is to provide these missing substances which are synthesized in the liver. So give FFP in severe respiratory distress or in those with so-called happy hypoxia, and because it is due to pulmonary thromboembolism. So the so-called happy hypoxia is not directly due to COVID-19 infection. It is multifactorial, and therefore the treatment has to be individualized rather than discussing only on prone ventilation and that kind of ventilation. Pulmonary thromboembolism is the most important reason behind the happy hypoxia, and that's due to multiple factors, including dehydration. There may be a component of interstitial pneumonia, which is known to occur in some people with any viral infection, and they will benefit by steroid anyway. Endothelial damage and in situ thrombosis is rare, even they will benefit probably by steroid. The number of people developing these issues are high only because of the accumulation of the vulnerable people. But we did nothing to remove the vulnerabilities during this 1 year and 3 months. So the impact of lockdown has only increased the vulnerability. Now in this scenario, I would recommend that we need to nurture clinical skill, common sense, and social sense, which has been desperately be missing in the society and in the medical community. Coming to sensible management of COVID-19 in the community, I would recommend that let us get exposed to virus and get well naturally in a phased manner. That was the best option rather than fighting for the vaccine. Now you can see the confusion at the vaccination centers. But I don't say you should not go for vaccine. Let us have the vaccine, but don't think you will die if you do not get the vaccine. You can manage it otherwise, unless you are vulnerable. Symptoms occur only in a minority. We cannot shut down for long. Nothing can stop the virus, as I mentioned before. It is inevitable, and we cannot run away from it. We need to prepare the medical profession to fight the disease. But disease means only those with symptoms, not the asymptomatic COVID positives. Let us see the CT scan in diagnosis of COVID pneumonia. Even that is identified. At least one radiologist in Mumbai has come out with an article saying that it is an absurdity. Do not use CT scans to diagnose COVID pneumonia. Even the radiologist has commented. Why not clinicians discuss that? No clinician has ever mentioned that. Clinical skill seems to have died here. Now I'll tell 2 case histories just to drive home my points, which I had seen 2 days back. 40-year-old male with history of type 2 diabetes mellitus for the last 4 years. He's on metformin, smoker, occasional alcohol consumption. He had severe fever, high-grade fever and myalgia, bilateral throbbing headache. 10 days back, there was no rhinitis and sore throat or cough. He was hospitalized, tested positive for dengue fever. He had severe thrombocytopenia and was managed conservatively and became febrile and discharged home. 4 days after, he developed cough and progressive breathlessness, and he presented to us in our OPD with these new onset symptoms. On examination, he had all features of overweight nature. He had NASH, and he was febrile at this point, but there was palatal petechia, and his pulse rate was high, blood pressure was low, S1, S2 were muffled, chest was clear, no organomegaly. So the provisional diagnosis was dengue fever myocarditis. It can happen in anyone. And that was that only. I didn't have any other diagnosis. And then these were the investigation that he brought with him. And he was given IV steroid, IV fluid and supportive measures, and he improved. And then the report came as COVID positive. What should we do? Then he was reluctant to get admitted in a COVID ward. So I sent him home with that advice. And I had examined him, his oral cavity including, without, after removing his mask. I don't think we should be afraid like that. And I had examined several hundreds like that. I was not afraid of examining them. I used mask. I removed the mask of the patients in all of them. And this is what happens now. After admission, several of them are tested COVID positive, and we do not know what to do with them. This is another patient admitted on Friday. He was a decompensated cirrhosis. He developed a low-grade fever and drowsiness. He went into hepatic encephalopathy. In fact, he had several such episodes in the last 2 years. This time, incidentally, again, he was detected COVID-19 positive because of the protocol demands that every admitted patient has to be tested for it. Where should we send him? I was reluctant to send him to another COVID care center. So he was admitted anyway in an isolation ward. There is no other alternative now. I don't mind managing him in the general ward, taking just universal precautions. That's all what we need to do with these kind of patients. This is not a COVID patient. This patient also will be branded as COVID when something happens. This is the prototype of several patients I had seen during the last 15 months. I'm sure the problems were not entirely due to COVID in all of them. But when something happens to them, it always is counted as COVID. So this is the attitude now. Test, 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 and make it COVID-19. This is the attitude we have been following for the last 15 months. And now we can see several strategies are documented as effective. Arsenicum album, coronal tablets, steam inhalation, oxygen kiosk, extended lockdowns. All measures are documented as effective. Why? Because 99% recover spontaneously. Yesterday, I saw some evil spirit, the Mandravadi, doing some Mandravadam on removing corona. All this will work because 99% will recover spontaneously. And those who opposed my views encourage these kind of quacks. In fact, I was trying to make the people understand that it can be managed like any other common flu, but I was prevented from doing it. That is why all these quacks got an opportunity to come out with quick fix solutions. Actually, they were helping the people who came out with the arsenicum album and coronal tablets. One can sell anything in the name of COVID now. Actually, people are fishing in troubled waters. See the one Facebook post by one doctor who opposed me initially when I made these comments last year. This is the statistics in Kerala and India now, the serology survey. You can see that Kerala is 25% behind the rest of the country. That is because of the heavy lockdowns. We prevented the people getting infected, but the whole India has developed a high zero prevalence. Now, when the third wave comes, he himself has mentioned that if a third wave comes to Kerala, Kerala will have the maximum number of infections. We already had witnessed in the second wave. So what was the outcome of these heavy lockdowns? That is what we need to look at. Does airport screening help? It does not help to prevent the epidemic during community spread. This is the reality. False positive and false negative is common with the thermometer gun. Passengers can conceal the fever by history or by taking paracetamol. Even I have done that. But counseling of passengers can help. Screening is done to show that the government is doing something. This was what the report from Hong Kong during the Wuhan epidemic, an epidemiologist from Wuhan, from Hong Kong, reported very clearly that this airport screening is only to show that we are doing something. And there is an urgent need to filter the messages in social media because the media reports are frightening. If you read the reports daily, we will not do anything. It happens. It has happened already to millions. Reporting on the number of deaths due to corona to the general public is, in fact, it is unethical. Does it serve any purpose? It does not. Then if that is the case, then we should be reporting all the deaths with the numbers every day, like road traffic accidents, suicides, TB, diarrhea, poverty, diabetes, hypertension, cancers, and AIDS. Are we doing that every day? We are not doing. Then should not do that. Then look at these quarantine centers and first-line treatment centers. It's an unscientific approach. This was evidently given by a sensible person in New England Journal of Medicine itself, based on the U.S. detention centers. He mentioned very clearly that the physical and emotional stress and trauma can weaken the immune systems, thereby increasing the risk of systemic infection. 2019 has demonstrated how dangerous the US quarantine centers are. Thousands were detained, the migrants, the asylum seekers from Mexico and all. They all had several infections because of the detention alone. This was an article which clearly mentioned that this kind of massive detention is actually not scientific. Let us use masks wisely only, that too when indicated. It gives a false sense of security. give only to suspected persons or symptomatic persons or to healthcare workers, not to everyone by force. I will reveal my encounter with Nipah before the appearance of COVID in Kerala. If I was retired by then, 4 years after my retirement only, I was a silent spectator as a retired person. But I had interacted with the resident doctor who cared for the first patient. That doctor did not use a mask even. Sorry for the spelling mistake. The interaction with the resident doctor. So that doctor, resident doctor, did not even use mask when the doctor was intubating the patient who died of COVID, the Nipah. So that means, in spite of that patient harboring heavy viral load, the doctor did not get it. What does that show? It is immunity that decides. And then I visited the CHC Perambra, where the first patient was admitted. And I visited the house of the first patient without wearing a mask. In the Perambra hospital also, I went there without a mask to convince them that you don't have to continue using mask. The fear is unnecessary, and collected details of the healthcare worker who died and scrutinized the ward where the patient was admitted. And I had my own impression about what was happening there and the Skype and the hype that we created out of it. This is another picture I would like to show now, because I was in Milan airport, Italy on 27th February, traveled without a mask. You can see the people sitting there. The fear psychos are already started there. I traveled without a mask. And I had been seeing COVID positive cases. I'm not afraid of getting infected. I will take only the universal precautions. I'm sure that if something happens to me, it is because of my own problems, not because of the virus. So I'm trying to help my colleagues to give the courage to face COVID in a different manner rather than hiding behind the scene. So what does common sense tell us? Study diet, lifestyle, body, mind, and environment of the patients. We will get the answer to the cause of all the symptoms and the deaths, the vulnerabilities we can find out. COVID-19 positive often is like an incidental or detected on unnecessary routine scanning. Remember our objective while seeing a patient. When somebody has come with a serious disease, you cannot cure all of them. Cure is possible only sometimes, but try to comfort often by giving some medicines. But use always consoling words. These are all our objective when a patient develops a serious disease. But we have so many other things to do to prevent them ending up in the hospital that we are ignoring, that we left to the quacks. And they came out with the arsenicum album and quick fix solutions. We did not focus on what we could have done. The frightening problems seen are not worth informing the public. That's another thing we should know. Doctors and health workers should prepare themselves by healthy diet and lifestyle to keep them fit and healthy. In fact, this was a post which I made in January 2020 on my Facebook page based on these common sense approaches, but it was only laughed at. Practice respiratory hygiene, not during lockdowns and during this outbreak, throughout our life. Practice hand hygiene, use soap, water, and common sense liberally. Do not touch nose without washing hands. Eat a balanced diet always, 3 times a day. Keep good oral dental hygiene. Take adequate water. Avoid dehydration. Give a face mask to those with common cold during this period. General public should not wear face masks unnecessarily. This was before the government direction on using face mask as a necessity. Do not spread panic and scare. Trivialize it to the public. Actually, we should trivialize the infection to the public rather than scaring them. Those who eat a balanced diet and having good diet lifestyle and taking precautions do not have to worry at all. It's anyway another common call. These were my statements, but I was attacked unnecessarily because of making these statements. Now look at what has happened in UK. This gentleman, this doctor who is in charge of COVID care is a clinician, not an office chair, a public health person. He's seeing patients. I got a message from one of my students in UK that he's a clinician with common sense. He says no more lockdowns. UK will treat COVID-19 as a seasonal flu. Even Singapore has done it. So let us see what to do in future, how to move forward, and how to tackle all the infections in this background. Do not panic. Do not spread scare. It's a mass hysteria that we have generated. There is dangerous lack of common sense and lack of scientific approach. There is overuse of technology. Protect ourselves and protect our contacts. We cannot stop the wind or cyclone or flood once it has come. We can certainly prevent the damage, but work for its prevention too. So let us be aware of the background issues, the marginalizations, which when the COVID made an appearance, and we had been ignoring these priorities for decades, and that is why we had large number of vulnerable people. Let us now at least let us start changing after this period at least. This is a real issue, malnutrition, seen in 99 to 100%. Even this person is malnourished. Let us educate and empower them. Let us provide safe drinking water through pipes. The water in the pipes should be potable, rather than focusing on providing Divya gel and other kind of bottled waters. Let us educate and empower people for proper waste handling and provide them with good waste management. That is a fight against Zika virus. What is the point in educating about Zika guidelines when we have already having other malaria, leptospirosis, typhus, and dengue, all due to the poor waste management? After ignoring this, what is the point in preparing guidelines on Zika virus? Let us promote proper waste disposal habits and provide foolproof, decentralized waste management in the society. Let us provide clean toilets for all. When we say wash your hands, let us provide a wash basin at least. Let us provide decent shelter for all. Let us have better distribution of wealth and human resources. The marginalized ones are more prone to all the infections. And let us check consumerism. Prevent our celebrities from promoting unethical advertisements, making us eat unwanted things, making us buy unwanted things. Let us not see use of technology as science. Let us prevent overuse of technology. The RT-PCR pandemic that we have generated is an overuse of technology. Technology is just a technique for improvising an act or an art or a medical practice, but use of technology is not science. Science is just studying natural events and things, observing, experimenting to know how the world works. And then you apply logical thinking, logical behavior, using common sense for the benefit of the society. Then only you are scientific. Just to give an example, you could use science to prevent the child falling into the bowel. Just by spending 500 rupees, you can prevent it. But whatever technology used to dig out the child is not science at all. Preventing a war only science. Using weapons, manufacturing weapons even is not a science. Let us know why people get diseases. These are the causes for all the diseases that we have among us. And when they get admitted to hospital, we are concentrating on giving medicines, resecting, repairing organs, bypassing, replacing it at enormous cost, what we are unaware of, or we do not get time to think of all these basic issues which went wrong before they became patients. If you say we are interested in these diseases, we should have interest in all these. Then only we can be eligible to be even called or identified as doctors. This is a very important issue that we need to identify at least with the COVID-19. So we in our midst have a combination of malnutrition and consumerism, which is a deadly combination. The malnourished people are exposed to all these bad habits. And then you have all these diseases as a package. And that is why India has become the highest disease burden in the world. You name any disease, we are number one. We are not even number two. Actually, we have been sitting on a volcano which has already erupted, and COVID-19 has just exposed all our vulnerabilities. That's all. Let us go back to a new normal state. Do not make it a political issue. It's not a political issue. People, unfortunately, in our country has lost human attitudes. When I say something, they look at through their political eyes. They have lost common sense. They lost human attitudes. That's why I was attacked in the social media for making these comments last year. Let us be scientific and principle-centered. Whatever may be our political lineage, let us learn to think scientifically, neutrally, principles centered. Continue the universal precautions, no more lockdowns, no more COVID care centers, no more COVID wards even. Let us manage COVID as usual infection. At the most, we can put them in isolation wards, but all of us should be prepared to go and see without wearing even PPE kits. Just we are wasting money on head shields and gloves unnecessarily. You need to wash your hands with soap and water. PPE kits also need not be worn unnecessarily. No need of special COVID care ward. Let us get out of this RT-PCR pandemic. We are wasting our resources. Let us stop the practice of generating panic. Journalists, doctors should advise the society. For that, we need to popularize family doctors and bring a referral system to achieve all this. This is what we need in future. Let us provide the social determinants of health to every individual. No individual should be left out, and that will reduce the disease burden. Then we need to have family doctors sitting in each primary health center. It's not enough that we transform them into family health centers by improving the infrastructure. The doctor sitting there should be trained in family medicine, who have the aptitude for it. They should not say that I'm waiting for a PG program to go escape from there. This is what is happening. The primary health centers do not have permanent doctors because all of them are waiting for a PG program just to escape from there. This is not the way to run the primary health centers. And then we need a large number of general hospitals, internal medicine, pediatrics, OBG, general surgery, orthopedics, ENT, ophthalmology, dental doctors are working. And these two doctors should be managing almost all the patients and a very few number of super specialty and cancer hospitals. This stable health pyramid we need to build at least now. Everyone should be empowered to practice good lifestyle. I'm not going to highlight on what is good lifestyle, which I have been discussing all throughout. So this is what has happened. The fear, psychosis, and mass hysteria in COVID-19 is like letting out an evil spirit, as in mythological stories. It has happened already. Now the only way to put it back is by giving vaccine. There's no other way. So let us give vaccine to everyone, but no more lockdowns. Don't think I am an anti-vaxxer. To prove my point, I took vaccine among the first batch itself, because somebody has started spreading the news that I am against vaccination. It was not. I'm just trying to convince the scientific methods of approaching this disease. This is a sentence I am reminded too often during this period. It is easier to fool the people than to make them believe that they have been fooled. This was mentioned by Mark Twain. It's very relevant these days. So let us have common sense. Let us wake up. Let us do something positive. Let us save ourselves and our next generation from this issue and other infections like Zika virus. Rather than making guidelines for treating Zika virus, let us understand the real issues. Let us prevent these diseases, and let us learn to manage them in the periphery, in the community setting, rather than bringing them to ICUs and give them ventilatory care and other supports. Thank you for the patient hearing. If you have any questions, I can take up. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. If you have any queries, you can ask now, please.
Sir, this is Sridevi, sir. This is
Thank
Sridevi,
you.
sir. So I have a doubt. What is the effect of vaccination in immunosuppressed individuals? Those
in
with
immunosuppressed, in those with immunosuppressed state. Hello.
Yes, sir. Those in immunosuppressed state. Effect of vaccination, sir.
In fact, I also am doubtful about, because if they are immunosuppressed, a vaccination also may not produce adequate antibody response. So, in fact, these are the people who need to be isolated and protected. But vaccination may be given, hoping that it will generate at least some antibodies so that they can prevent getting the infection and probably getting a milder disease. So these are the individuals who genuinely require vaccination. But even those people are benefited genuinely by modifying their diet and lifestyle. Because you need to provide the basic requirements like vitamin D, folic acid, B12, protein, including. They don't treat any of these. Because most of the people with immunosuppression are not receiving the basic requirements in diet, and that is more important than anything else. Once they are given proper diet, they will also have a proper antibody response.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any more questions?
So one question in the chat box. How we can come at a conclusion that who all are susceptible?
How we can?
How can we come at the conclusion that who all are susceptible?
In fact, I have made this comment. I have shown one slide where I mentioned who all are vulnerable and how we can pick up them. Just study their diet and lifestyle. Just look at their body mass index. And if they're overweight by any criteria, they are susceptible. By overweight by any criteria means even if they have put on too weight more than their original weight, and if they have raised SGPT, if they are not eating a balanced diet, if they are not getting enough protein, if they are not getting B12 containing diet, if they are not getting vitamin D containing diet, if they are not eating folic acid containing diet, if they are not taking adequate water, if they are overweight by any criteria, if their SGPT is elevated, if they have albumin globulin reversal, all these people are vulnerable. So we need to remove these vulnerabilities by providing balanced diet, reducing their weight, adequate hydration, rest and sleep. These are things which we can do. Actually, these are very easy, can be done if you are in the periphery, rather than waiting for them to end up in ventilators. Any other question? Hope it is clear. Hello? Hope.
Sir. There is no further question.
Hello.
Okay. If there are no
Direct
more
question,
questions,
if any direct question?
any direct question? Hello? Who all are, I see hello?
Hello. This is Dr. Nalini, sir. I just want to
Please.
know about any recommendations in pregnancy, because we are getting a lot of patients who are definitely the patients who are becoming bad with COVID infection pregnancy. Most of them are having high risk symptoms. I mean, they're at high risk because of diabetes, hypertension, or obesity is definitely has come to a pandemic situation in the pregnant ladies. So, any recommendations? I mean, specific recommendations for?
In fact,
pregnant?
the pregnant ladies who get problems are the same group who are overweight or obese or having underlying diabetes or elevated SGPT due to fatty liver. And these are the patients who are at risk. But with pregnancy, there is another additional risk factor because pregnancy is prothrombotic. Already the prothrombotic situation is there in a patient who develops problems after getting COVID. And with additional prothrombotic state, they are at a higher risk. So these patients will benefit by giving B12, folic acid. Invariably, they should get B12 also, because especially if the MCV is on the higher side. Adequate hydration is important. Low dose heparin will help. And plasma may be given if they are in respiratory distress. Steroid will help because it can control the cytokine storm. Some of them may be having pneumonia. And pneumonia has to be identified and treated early. So all these multi-pronged approaches is enough to save those who are eligible to be saved. Otherwise, when they are morbidly obese, having multiple nutritional factors, multiple comorbidities, uncontrolled diabetes, we may not be able to save all of them. It is natural calamity we forgot to prevent. We forgot to prevent because we did not study them before they developed all these. That's the point I was trying to tell. In the community setting or whenever we see a patient in the early pregnancy itself, we should have identified these vulnerabilities rather than waiting for them to come with COVID infection. Hope it is clear.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Dr. Anandarajan is there.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Any points to make?
No, sir, you have considered all these things in a global perspective, which I have to repeatedly remind everybody who is attending this. We are not talking about local. Suppose I am sitting in a small area and I am talking about managing the pandemic there. You have given an overall perspective how to manage on a national scale or even international level. But only thing is people are not trying to follow that and just confining themselves to why you said don't use mask. It's like that only. We are only picking some words or phrases from what you have commented on and then trying to make a global statement on that rather than the other way around.
That's true.
Thank
because
you,
that only means loss of common sense and humaneness. That is what we need to nurture now. I don't blame anyone for that, because it's all because of the poor practices in medical training and the lack of exposure to human attitudes, the communication skill, and developing common sense approaches to problems. All these are missing in the medical profession that we need to nurture now. So I don't have anything against them, those who made adverse comments, because they were all doing it out of ignorance. So I don't have anything against them. That's how I look at it. Thank you. Any other comment or questions?
So again, Dr. Sridevi, sir.
Please.
Sir, what is the likelihood of developing thrombotic disease post-COVID in people with bleeding disorders?
Bleeding disorders like thrombocytopenia or hemophilia.
Yes, sir.
They have a slight protection because of their inherent problems, but that should not be taken as an advantage, because they may have problems when they develop some other issues. Anyway, there is a slight decrease in thrombotic tendency because of the decrease in platelet count or the coagulation factors, but they have several other inherent problems of their own, which can predispose them to more problems.
Okay, sir.
Thank you. Any more direct questions? Otherwise, we can conclude.
Okay, thank you, sir. If there is no further question, we can wind up the session. Now I would like to invite Dr. Bijoy Matthew, Assistant Surgeon, FHC Alakod, Terthalli, for vote of thanks.
Thank you. The respected Speaker P.K. Session, sir, and the participants of this meeting. I would like to, first of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to our beloved teacher, Professor P.K. Session, sir, for this wonderful, enlightening session, as usual. Nowadays, people are understanding your different, different perspective of the COVID-19 and this pandemic, as sir was telling, sir was giving in the initial phase itself. We are sure that the time will prove, eventually prove your views were correct. And I would like to, sincerely, I am giving thanks to all participants. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Have a good day. Let us see that at least in future we will have a better management of COVID-19. We will come out with some other useful topic next time. Thank you.